And then they'll be in a relationship and just, this guy, you haven't beat me, you don't love me. Talk about passion, talk about depression. Another one which people may not think is a mental health problem, but it is
what is that thing that we should stop believing about mental health?
Another thing with depression is that it can affect sexual life.
It's not depression until
if something is wrong and something seems amiss, please seek help. You put all of the burden on one person, whatever, even if it is all of the emotional or financial, but you put it on just one person, it can affect their mental health. And what people say is that,
hello, welcome to the Loaded Couple. In UK, 1 of 6 adults are experiencing depression, anxiety, mental health issue in general, and it's caused for concerns of people in the United Kingdom, especially in the whole world. Over 980 million people are having depressions, mental health issues. Today we have a wonderful sister, lady, a wife, and a doctor in the house. Welcome, Dr. Tosin, to the Loaded Couple.
Thank you very much for having me. Hello, everyone.
You are welcome. Let's dive in. Mental health issues. Firstly, why did you choose to be a mental health doctor? Or your profession? Why did you choose a profession?
Why did I choose mental health? It wasn't a straightforward answer, because I've gone from wanting to be a surgeon to wanting to be a family practitioner, and then finally to mental health. And I think I've always had an interest in mental health, but for me, it just felt a bit abstract when I was in medical school. So I felt like I couldn't relate to what people complained about. So someone will come and say, well, I feel low in my mood, but I can't see the mood. But they're saying they feel low, and then you treat that and that works. But with things like surgery, if they have maybe like a lump that needs to take, now you can easily go and do that. So it was a bit abstract and for me, so I felt like I couldn't do mental health at the time. Then I remember when I met my husband, I think we were talking about marriage and we were talking about specialty. I said, have you ever thought of doing psychiatry? And I'm like, psychiatry? Well, I don't think I can do psychiatry. And then when we moved to the UK, the first job I got had a mix of surgery, a mix of psychiatry. And so I said, you know what, I'll for this job and then I'll see if I actually like psychiatry. And then I remember there was a day pastor was in his car and was taking us home and talked about, and he said, have you ever thought of doing psychiatry? It's a good one to look into. So, it was there somewhere in my subconscious. So I did that job, and when I did my psychiatric placement, I found out I really enjoyed it. So I decided that I was going to sort of go a bit further into it and specialize in psychiatry. I've come to now like the old age psychiatry bit of it. So dementia, neurodegenerative disorder. So that's what I am finally specializing in. So yes, that is my long journey into becoming a psychiatrist.
Wow, interesting. So what do you love about the job?
Interacting with people. I love interacting with people. And like I said, I'm currently specializing to become an old age psychiatrist. So it's sort of interacting with the elderly. I enjoy it a lot. They're funny, cheeky. It's just very nice having conversations with them.
Wow.
I enjoy doing that.
That's good. So looking at mental health today in our society, what does it really mean? Well,
mental health is basically a state of mental well-being. That's the definition. And it's a state of mental well-being that allows us to cope with, say, life stresses, and allows us to, be in well-being, function well, work well. I think that's the summary of what mental health is.
So why do many people overlook mental health issues until things go wrong?
The reason why is because, in a way, mental health is a bit abstract. Like I did say, when I was in medical school, I felt like it wasn't tangible. I couldn't touch it. So to me, it was more like a mystery.
You can't perform surgery on mental health.
So what's happening? So it's very easy to overlook it because you can't really it's a bit abstract to people. It's not very tangible. So stuff like it's very easy to overlook it and say, well, then nothing like that. You're just making it up. But then even though we can't see it, we can see symptoms, we can see manifestations of when someone has a mental problem or mental difficulty. And sometimes those manifestations can be really, really really severe. So that's why it's important, because things can start really small, mild, and then they can go to a point where it's severe and it's very, very to get people back to being in a state of mental well-being. So that's why it's very important to, be able to pick up on it.
Wow, interesting. So what are the common mental health issues now in 2025?
I think the most common ones would be depression and anxiety. That would commonly see.
Depression, anxiety, and I think, is it stress that really causes that sometimes? Maybe stress at work or maybe life situations or something like that?
So stressors can be a trigger for mental health conditions. And most times I like to say it like, I like to use an elastic band for an analogy. So most times everyone has the elastic limit, okay? And then when you stretch the elastic band, it goes back to its previous state. When things are going well, the person is coping, the person is doing fine, they're able to manage stressors, they're able to cope well, they're able to do things. And then when they get to a point where they lose the elastic limit, it's almost, it's when you get to the point and then you stretch it, it doesn't go back. It's maybe because it's been stretched too much, it's been stressed too much, they've gone through too many things, and then they've gotten to a point where they're literally at the verge of breaking down. And at that point, if you then introduce more stress as they break, and that's the point where I say that if people start having mental difficulties like depression. But then I like to say that, unlike in my analogy where you can't put the elastic band together, mental health issues are treatable. So a person with difficulties can get treated. So yes, stressors play a significant impact in mental health. Trauma is also another thing that we see that plays a big role in mental difficulties in people. Most times, stressors, traumas, in the elderly, things like age,
could affect mental.
Substances, so alcohol, drugs, and things like that affect mental health.
So how can this affect marriage?
Well, any type of mental difficulty can affect marriage, and I think the most common one, and I may be wrong, usually is unresolved past trauma. People who are coming from a traumatic background, people who are coming from, the lot of people who, I've heard stories of people that will say that maybe because they were in an abusive household and they saw their fathers beat their mothers or something. So that was what love meant. And then they'll be in a relationship and they'll say, guy, you haven't beat me, you don't love me. I mean, they have an argument, it is, you must beat me or you must beat me. So unresolved trauma.
Really?
I've heard stories.
Wow.
So unresolved trauma is, I think it's a big thing that impacts marriages. And then because of those things, there are certain expectations. Sometimes people may not be fully open with their spouses because they've had those past trauma, those childhood trauma, and it may be difficult for them to open up to their spouse. It may be that they want to, isolate themselves and things like so. That affects marriages, and sometimes because of how they've been treated, then they almost expecting that their spouse will treat them like that. There are people who will tell you that because their self-esteem has been so battered, they don't really expect anything good from their marriage. You just feel like, that's it. And people will tell you that they're not worthless. And then even when they have a spouse that is trying to show them they are what they're like, they find it difficult to accept that love. They find it difficult to receive that love from their spouse because they don't feel that they deserve it. They don't feel that they're loved. And sometimes some of the friction in marriage may be response to unresolved trauma, to past trauma, to what's the word now, to a self-image that has been wrong self-image because they still see themselves in that form. And people who, for example, didn't get any form of what's the word now? Maybe they didn't get any form of emotional availability when they were younger. So, for example, maybe they were always begging for affection and things like that. It can affect their marriage, and then they find that they're really they're trying to do so hard to impress their spouse, begging for their affection, and then maybe the person just doesn't understand where they are coming from, and that can cause friction in marriage. So, for example, if someone who has had like a really elder childhood and someone has had an unhealthy childhood, it will take a lot to unlearn and relearn. And someone who I follow on Instagram, and I can't remember the story, and I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but I think her mom was a single mom, and she carried that fear for a long time, and even after she got married, she was always worried that what if my husband left and things like that. So things like that can affect marriage. Okay, and I think that's one of the big past trauma, unresolved past trauma. Some people come in with very warped thinking that they have a very weird perspective of marriage, thinking that, well, hoping for the worst really. Another thing that affects marriage is any mental health problem can affect marriage. That's the truth. Depression, that's a big one.
It's a big one. Yeah. Almost everyone.
That's a big one. And it's not just low moods. There are times when people can be low in their mood.
Really?
Or there are times when it's to be, the definition says persistent low mood for at least 2 weeks, and then there are other symptoms. So it's not just
it's not depression until it's over 2 weeks.
So until you've had the symptoms for 2 weeks with other symptoms. So it's not just the low mood. So there are other things that have to come into play too before you can say that So I know that sometimes people just have low mood and they say, I'm depressed. Well, not necessarily. It may just be a phase. And for example, people go through things, and that would expect really that if you are a normal person, your mood would dip a bit. So for example, if somebody loses their job, your mood will dip. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will go into depression. If someone loses some money, your mood will dip. So there are instances where we would expect that there will be a dip in mood, and we don't necessarily mean that the person is depressed at that point. It may just be a normal reaction to what has happened, which is all fine. But we do have cases where people are depressed and they can't function and they are very low in mood, and that's a big deal in marriage, because especially if it's not recognized, you think that, well, what is wrong with this woman, or what is wrong with this man? He just doesn't care about himself, or they don't just care about themselves, but that person is struggling with the will to do those things because they are depressed. They are just, sometimes when we wake up and we're able to get in the shower, some of us take it for granted. There are people who are so depressed that it may take them hours to be able to get themselves into the shower. That willpower is just lost. Some people just don't have the will to live anymore. And that's when you start hearing things like people having suicidal thoughts and things like that. Another thing with depression is that it can affect sexual life. So it can cause...
I wanted to say that. What about the sexual life?
So it can cause a reduction in libido or sexual interest. And some people can just say, this person is no longer interested in me. But, it just boomerang into something else. And the trick with depression is also that sometimes, even the medications that we use, some of the medications we use to manage depression can also cause a dip in libido. So it's almost like a catch-22 situation. But the thing is that there are other medications that give that side effect. So depression is a big one. And there's something I've been seeing recently about high-functioning depression, where people are depressed, but then they are still sort of trying hard to work and still... So you can't really see. They are still managing to do their day-to-day, but then they are quite depressed.
So that's high functional.
That's I've seen it recently. It's not the definition in the books. It's just something I've seen online. These days, people have terminologies for everything. Well, just something I've seen online. And my understanding from it is that this is not in the books, but my understanding from it is that people have depression. People are depressed, but then they are sort of really to sort of push past it, and so it's difficult for you to to know. And people give examples of, for example, people that you see one day and they're smiling and they're happy, and then the next day you hear that they committed suicide.
What about mood swing and depression?
So mood swing is different from depression. People have mood swings. Sometimes people have mood swings. It's normal to have mood swings.
So it's not a sign of depression?
Not necessarily. Sometimes people's mood there be big fluctuations in people's mood, and I think we would see that in things like bipolar disorder, where people can be depressed for a long period of time, and then they are fine, and then another period of time they are manic, and then they are all over the place, and so we can see that in bipolar. But mood swings are not necessarily what you would expect in depression. You may expect it in certain other mental health conditions like personality disorders, but then it has to be like really severe fluctuating mood swings, and people they get a hold of their mood just changes, and there has to be other things in relation to that. So the thing with mental health is that you can't just pick one symptom and say that this person has this, because if people go through certain types of stress, they may have those types of, so it has to be a cluster of symptoms for a sufficient length of period before you can say, okay, this person has this problem or this condition.
Wow. How can couples help each other without becoming each other therapists?
Everything.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, we've talked about passion, we've talked about depression. Another one which people may not think is a mental health problem, but it is you see people that take alcohol, and they will tell you, oh, they just take it to wind down. And they realize that today they are taking one bottle, maybe to wind down, and then it increases. And then it becomes a thing where they are so addicted to they can't function without alcohol. And that has a huge impact on not just marriages. And you see that it's affecting the way people are communicating with their spouse. I mean, if they don't have alcohol, they almost go berserk, like they need to have it. They are dependent on it. And sometimes when they then use and get to the point where they are intoxicated, they can be really mean to their spouses. And when their spouses are even trying to help them, they just don't see it. So that's another big one. And substance abuse. Another one I would like to add to it is also a type of addiction, and I would say that is phone addiction, social media addiction. It doesn't necessarily, I think game addiction has been classified recently under as a type of mental health problem. Right. But I'm not thinking phone addiction. But personally, I say that any form of addiction really can be a big problem in a marriage. For example, you are talking with your spouse, and then you're on your phone all through.
That's mindlessness.
You don't even care that they are there. There are people that will tell you that they're on TikTok. You know what TikTok looks like. I've heard only good things about it. That once you're on it, you get stuck and you can scroll for hours and hours on it. So imagine and people don't know that it's an addiction. People don't. It's screen addiction. People don't see it that way. And they'll tell you, oh, I'm just whiling away time. But then you have somebody else in the house, and then you are not having that conversation with them. You both are scrolling through screens. You are seeing fake lifestyle, and that is then influencing your expectations. And then you're expecting that your wife who has had maybe 3 kids for you should look like a model, because you are seeing that on Instagram, or you're expecting that your husband, who you guys are, you have a good system that is working for you, but because somebody said their husband does this, why can't my husband do the same thing? So I think that in our generation, screen addiction, social media addiction is also one thing for us to be very mindful of and for us to be wary of, and it's very, very to fall into that trap. And it's just spirals. It's a lot of things you're comparing.
It's contributing a lot to mental health issues, because it leads to anxiety, depression.
Yes, it is. And there are people who even I had some time back at work that there are certain, I don't know which social media, but there are certain accounts that will tell you things like, oh, my life as somebody with depression, my life as somebody with bipolar, my life as somebody, and then people were now following it step, because they just see and say, oh, okay. They look at it, oh, okay, that means I have this. And I know I've seen someone personally who to me and said they thought they had depression. I said, well, I don't think you have depression. They said, well, I saw this on TikTok and it fits all of what is happening to me, so I do have depression. So those media channels are having big influences on people. I think that's also not necessarily a mental problem, but it's and yeah.
I've been there before. There was a time I was addicted to a particular app on my phone, X. Twitter, it was formerly called Twitter. Then I really love it because when I'm just bored at work or something, I'll just let me see what is happening, trending online, and from there, 30 minutes to me. Sometimes when my guys are talking to me, I don't even not aware of where I was. So I have to like, oh God, what is happening to me? This thing is becoming something else. So it's got to the extent that if I didn't check Twitter in one day, I won't get myself. I just have to open my phone, just see what is trending. So like now I was mindful of it and I wanted to stop. So what can I do? And I started taking some steps that really helped me. So I can just put I get from I get away from my feasibility where I can easily say it. So with days, I can do 1 day, 2 days, go back 3 days, the third day, fourth day, go back again, off and on, and with months I'm it now. Yeah, so it's a good one. And to be honest, I open it and just see bad news that affects my mood. So I'll be like, I'm kind of emotional, you know. So when I see something bad happening to people, I feel like, God, what is this? So since then, I don't read bad news. If I want to say anything, I'll just go. Now I read newspaper more. I think which is better as an alternative to.
Yeah. And I think even on X, apart from just the news, there's other that shouldn't be there.
That is not even good for a Christian, to be honest. That's when you will see, can you create this? Somebody will go naked online and say, can you recreate this? So it's becoming something.
Yeah, it's becoming something. Yeah, it is. And yeah, what we feed on plays a lot on our minds and influences us in ways that we don't even know. There are people who on hearing a news only, on seeing a news article, they develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and you know they've heard that news and they just can't wrap their head around it. Why is this happening? And you know they start thinking of it and they start developing symptoms of PTSD, and you're like, and that's how I always say that be very careful what you open yourself to.
Thank you. Balancing ambition and wellness, especially in this country.
You have to, or else you will be burnt out. And being burnt out is not good. Basically, I will give myself as an example. I was burnt out. I was in core training, and in my final year of core training, I had to do 2 exams. I took up, I was doing a postgraduate certification, and then I was working in a busy job, and I did my exams and I did well and all of that. But one in that period was, I thank God for my husband because he was quite understanding. I would come back home and I would just go upstairs and that was it. I was just flat tired. And you know, I would just be there. We are going to want to do this. I'm like, I'll do it later. He would do it because I wouldn't do it later. Okay, what are we having for dinner? I don't know. We would make dinner. Dinner is ready. Okay, maybe I'll come down. So maybe I'll do dinner. So I was very burnt out. Even at work, I did my job and then just left. And I know that it was one of the periods where I didn't get really good feedback. And even though at that point I was like, well, these people, there was some personal flair to it and all of that, but reflecting on it, I felt like maybe my burnout also affected sort of me, not my work. It was more about my relationship with it. Felt like I didn't really relate with it. I just came to work, did my work, and that was it.
Yeah.
So when I was done with that year of training and I was done with my exams, I told my husband, I said, this is it. I think I want to continue doing this anymore. And he said, well, I said, I don't know. it's been a lot. I'm tired. I just want to take a rest. And those were my words. I said, I'm tired. I just want to take a rest. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And to him, you enjoy being a doctor. So what is wrong? Why don't you want to do this anymore?
So your husband is also a doctor?
No, he's not. He's an engineer. So I spoke with my friend and I said, I think I'm burnt out. I think I'm tired. I just don't want to do this anymore. And then she said, take some time off. So I said, yes, that's my plan. I'll take some time off. So I spoke to my husband. And my husband said, I know you. If you take time off, after 2 weeks, you start saying that I want to go to work. I want to go to work. I want to go to work. So what I did was I reduced my work. So I went less than full time. And I'm probably speaking from a place of privilege of being able to do, because maybe not everybody has the opportunity. But if you do, I think it's worth it. So I went less than full time, and now I only work 4 days a week. I don't work on Mondays, and I love it. It's the best decision I've made ever. Obviously, I took a pay cut. People ask me, how do you cope with the pay cut? I'm like, really, I'm not even bothered about it. Like, the important thing for me is my mental health. And it was good that I know it took a while for me to recognize the burnout, because maybe I've attended courses on burnout after that, and there are steps where that could have been taken, early on, when I was sort of noticing those things. Say, look, maybe you're taking on a bit too much. Maybe cut down on this, or think of things that will promote your own mental well-being and engage more in those things. So there are things that stress our mental health, and there are things that promote us in being well-being. So maybe engage more in those things, even if it's maybe just having a chat with people or talking with people or socializing. So I'm an advocate for balancing ambition and your mental. So I took that time. I'm probably going to finish my specialty training longer. That's probably going to take me longer to finish. I don't mind, really. I'm not getting paid as much as my colleagues. I own it. When people ask me, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm happy this way. I just happy with the way things are. So I'm an advocate for it. I've been there. I've been burnt out, and it's not. If you don't have an understanding spouse, it's going to be difficult. Or if you don't have people who are understanding, it's going to be very difficult. And I always back on that, and I just thank God for my husband, because it was say, can you help me? I'll do it later. It was almost like I don't even know whether he just knew that there was something off about this woman, but he probably couldn't sort of pinpoint what it was. But it was so understanding, and he never for once said, "Oh, what's wrong" or something. Just cleaned up after me, like so he just did those things, and I'm really, really for that for that privilege, really. So yes, you have to balance things, or else you will get burnt out, and it can take a long time to recover from burnout. If I remember, then I took like a 4 days trip, just me. I left my husband and the kids alone. I just went alone.
Really?
Yeah, to somewhere in Scarborough where they were like.
Wow, Scarborough is a nice place.
Yes, it is. So I just went there and I just spent time. It was just so good just to spend them for myself alone. Yeah, so yeah, I would try to balance this.
I've been there at work. I took a pay cut because I can't cope. I don't like working at nights. I'm not a night person, so and they said if you don't want to work at night, and you have to take just less to that one compared to where I was before. I said I don't mind. Sunday, you can't take my Sunday from me. You can't take my Saturday from me, and you can't take my nights. They said, okay, if you don't want to do this, then another option is to go with the low pay role. I said, I don't mind if that's what will make me to stay at home and sleep and have good health. I don't mind, because sometimes I'll be driving from work by 6 a.m. and I'll just sit down, I'm dozing off from the wheel while driving. From the road, I mean. I will just see my hand is drifting away from the main road. I'll just wake up. Sometimes the stores doesn't make a sound. That thing is a lifesaver. To be honest, it is a lifesaver. But we thank God. I think it's very important to balance things up. And what are the religious myths about healing that you think people, because many Africans and Indians community, they don't usually, in fact, some people, they don't even care about maybe mental health. Some people just believe maybe they don't have money or they are not well, okay, financially, that's what causes mental health or something like that.
So I some of the myths about mental health, I think sometimes people think it's a spiritual attack.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily a spiritual attack. So we have to be, I'm always very careful because I don't want to sound like, I'm not a believer in, I don't believe in the supernatural. I believe there's the supernatural. The supernatural controls the natural. And sometimes when people have mental difficulties, sometimes it's not enough to just pray it away. I always say something that for us to know all these things, for us to have these medications, is because God has chosen in His mercy to reveal it to us. That's the truth. And that is why we have this thing. And it can go hand in hand. You can pray healing, and take medication. It can go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think the fact that help is there and they are able to access it, it's in itself is a testimony. There are people who have mental problems and they will tell you that they heard the voice tell them to go and jump the bridge, and they jump the bridge. So I won't go into that. But yes, it's not all spiritual. Yeah. There may be a spiritual flair to it, but it's not spiritual.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just take talking to someone, and it may just there's a lot of, in fact, the guidelines which we use will say that if somebody has mild depression, it has like a major thing, because depression can be mild, moderate as well. They can do things. They advocate for them to start with things like talking therapies before you think of medication. Do things like talking therapies, do things like CBT. All of that can help. Another thing sometimes that as Christians we mistake is sometimes we can mistake a mental health challenge for somebody becoming a bit more spiritual, and we just have to be careful because the Bible says test the spirit. I think we just have to be careful. I'm saying this from because it's something that I've seen happen before, and what someone told me then was that the Spirit of God will not trouble a person this much. So sometimes when people, start becoming overzealous, over spiritual, especially when that wasn't their person before, and you come and then they are seeing Rema that is really not in the Bible, and then they're telling you that God is, talking to them, and it just doesn't add up, and then they are troubled and they are not sleeping. It may just be the start of a psychosis, but we have to be really, really and navigate that very carefully. And I know that people don't like to hear it, but it's true. And one thing that I've learned is that the Spirit of God would trouble a person. When
to not trouble them out of His word, or out of His will.
Yeah, because you sometimes see people, they'll tell you, I haven't slept for 5 days, I've been meditating on this word, and when they are talking, you're like, I start saying, I something new, and this something new is not with the word of God, so you want to check. So I think those are some of the things that sometimes we as Christians can think that, okay, maybe this person is becoming a bit more, it's not all maybe more spiritual, or maybe they're having a spiritual problem. Mental difficulties are mental difficulties. I am not taking away from the fact that life is spiritual and people do have spiritual problems. I'm not taking away from the fact that happens. I know that demonic spirits can have very cruel spirits and can drive people mad, literally. But mental difficulties are real, and they are not always spiritual.
Steve, and daily tips can we apply? You talk about talking to people. What mental daily tips can we also apply apart from talking to people? For me, this is what I do when I'm feeling kind of depressed. Maybe you said depression, because we just use that word easily, often. And sometimes people ask me, I'm a very social guy. I talk to people, even at work. When I'm not in my mood, people will know that, Gabriel, what's going on? So one day, a guy walked to me, Gabriel, what's going on? Oh, you so calm? Are you depressed? I said, I'm not depressed in Jesus' name. I said, I'm not depressed in Jesus' name. So, yeah, but I wasn't just feeling myself. I was passing through some things that they're thinking about settling down in UK, all those stuff. Then I was just thinking a lot of things, and the guy just walked up to me and said, Gabriel, are you okay? So whenever I'm passing through that kind of phase in my life, this is what I do. I just play some music. I play some music that lifts my spirit, and I'll just be dancing. I'll just be shaking my head. Sometimes I'll just start a conversation, maybe traveling to some part of the country, and without knowing it, I'll just forget about it. So those are my own tips. Maybe you have more tips that can help people listening to us.
I think that's one of the things, but I'll start with like the start of the day. I would always say try and get good sleep. I think it's a good way to start the day. You're well rested, you're ready for the next day. If I know sometimes people think it's a superpower not being sleeping for only 4 hours. I'm not of that school of thought though, because when I sleep for 4 hours, I'll be very groggy the next day. So sleeping well is really good. That can help. Sleep has a huge impact on our mental health. A huge. Yeah, you see people who present with mental symptoms because they haven't slept, and it's one of the things when you're saying someone, have they been sleeping? And you say sometimes they haven't been sleeping. They can say, I haven't been sleeping the last 5 days. They've been trying to put. So it's one of the big things that a lot of us overlook and say, I just take 2 hours nap in 24 hours and I'm fine. It's not true.
It's not.
You need more than that. So a good sleep to start the day. Eating well is very helpful. Things like
balanced diet.
Yes, balanced diet. Things like exercising is very, very helpful. Like I said, also identifying your own coping strategies. You've identified yours as music. What works for you? What is it that when you find that you're stressing, what is that one thing that can help you? I'm talking to my husband. I call him. In fact, they will tell me that I can just call him and start ranting. Just listen and say, okay. Find what works for you. Everyone has something that helps them cope with the stress. We have daily stressors, whether we like it or not. It is them, and it's sort of how you are able to cope with that determines whether you're in mental well-being or not, sort of your resilience. So what are the things that promotes resilience in you? What are those things that help you to be in well-being? You can find what those things are and engage more in them. I'm not trying to be too Christianist, but as a Christian, having that time of fellowship, drawing strength from God, like just having, I enjoy it. Just having that time of, just that personal time, just worship and just thanking God. And before you go into, not necessarily saying, asking for anything, but just before you go into the day. Sometimes I find that when I'm driving, I'm listening to music to start my day. I'm listening to a message. I find it really helpful. I remember when I was in my house job and I was in a very toxic post. Sorry for the use of that one. What I found helpful was listening to music. So I just plugged in my earphones, and every time I'll be going to work, and I'm like, you can't possibly be in this rate and be this upbeat. I'm like, this is my own coping. Let me just, once I listen to it as I'm going to Lacrae, Lacrae the Christian rapper. Yeah. So once I'm just listening to it, I say, well, that is it. So that when they start like this, I'm already immune to everything they want to say. So identifying what works for you. Now, maybe not so much. I don't listen to Lacrae so much now. But sometimes just listening to a message, just meditating that as I go into work. So that I think that's what works for me really. Finding out what works for you. Some people find different ways of distressing. Some people, there was a time when we just came to the UK after I've worked for maybe I've come back from work I'll just go into the local Tesco and I'll just keep walking around. I'm not buying anything. But it was just calming for me. I'll just walk around and maybe at the end of the day I'll buy maybe one thing. But I can spend like 15 or 20 minutes in the shop. So just finding that thing that you find calming that helps you, and just having time for yourself. I tell my kids, mommy needs her me time, please. I'm like, please, can I do that? So finding time for yourself is also very, very important.
When is it time to seek professional help?
When is it time to seek professional help? You can seek professional help at any point in time. You know yourself. I don't want to say that you know yourself. And I've said when you are no longer coping, but when you are no longer coping, maybe too late. So when you find that there's been a dip in your mood and it's been going on for long and you can't shake it off, then seek professional help. When you find that sometimes people have mental health problems and they don't even know it, and it's somebody else that can notice it. So when you see that this person is acting out of character, you may want to call them and find out what is happening and encourage them to seek professional help. I would say help is available. Help is available. It's as easy as going on your phone and dialing 111. It's as easy as going on your phone and looking up NHS depression, NHS anxiety. Once something doesn't feel right and you're not able to shake that off, see a doctor. There is help available. There's help available everywhere. And I think, and then the way the UK is structured is such that there are some words that you type into your phone and it will bring up helpline. If you take your phone and you type suicide, next thing you see is helpline. So you just call, so you don't do something like that. So if something is wrong and something seems amiss, please seek help. There's help around. There's help around. And I know what scares people most times is they'll say, they don't want to take medication. It's not always medication. It's not always medication. There are other things to try, and you can try those things before you go to medication. And we're in a very unique place because most of us, and I'm referring to immigrants like myself, have come from a different country, a different culture, and we are here. We are trying to sort of acclimatize to the culture, to everything. It's a lot different from where we are coming from. The weather is not friendly, it's not helpful. For example, I came to the UK from Nigeria. We probably have summer all year round. Even our rainy season is still warm. And then we're here, and then probably have some months to the year, and then it doesn't help also that as Black people, our vitamin D levels can go low during the winter months, and that in itself can present with symptoms of depression. That's how as soon as you notice it, go and seek help. It may be as simple as they do your blood, your vitamin D is low, and you start taking vitamin D, and next thing you're all over the place. Or they say that one vitamin is low, and you start. So as soon as you find that something is wrong, you don't have to go through all of that.
So in Nigeria, but in Nigeria, you see that many people are not living too good, to like the quality of life, and compared to the United Kingdom, and yet people are more depressed in Europe than Africa. What is the secret?
Okay, these are my thoughts.
All right.
I want to say what the secret is. So even though the quality of life isn't very great, but we have community.
Of course.
People can socialize.
Right.
People can go and do
100%.
You struggle to find that in the...
You can't go to church and come back depressed sometimes.
You go to church. It's fellowship after fellowship.
Yeah, after fellowship. House fellowship.
Everybody's on the watch. Okay, I need to go I'm on call, I'm on this and all of that. And there is that seemingly lack of community you have to create. And I mean, for example, there are some of my neighbors that I've never seen before. It's just it's either they are not around when I'm around or something. Oh, you have neighbor, hello, hi. It's very. I know the other day I came back from work. It was winter, and I told my husband, you know what? I can't even blame people that they don't come out and say this to them, because where you want to come out in the cold and do what? But like back home, where people
they did not see you by 9 a.m. They will come and knock at you.
Yeah, they will say hello. So you have that help there. I mean, you can be going on the road and something happens. There are people ready to help you. It's very different. You can be on the road and something happens, and there's really nobody to help you. So I don't know. But I think that sometimes that lack of social interactions can really have a huge impact on people, and that seeming lack of community. And it may be that maybe we just perceive it that way because we haven't grown up here, and then people who are here already have that type of community and they are fine. But yes, and another thing that I think is a big factor is resilience. I believe that, and this is not trying to what's the word now? I'm not trying to be insensitive or anything like that, but I believe that we have higher resilience back, and sometimes it is you are forced into having that resilience, because by the time you have to trek from home to school because you now find bus to enter, you have resilience one way or the other. Or the situation will force you to be resilient, and the situation will force you to tolerate large amounts of stress. Whether that is good or bad is another story for another topic for another day. So there are some things that happen to you and they say, why are you crying? Who stole your bread? And you are forced into it, and you are quite resilient. And I find that level of resilience lacking most times. And it's from things like in school, kids are being told, well, it doesn't matter whether being first or second, it really doesn't matter, and things like that. Back home, you want to be first though, because they will ask that the person that should get. But then you're teaching here that it doesn't really matter whether you're first or second. It's okay. It's okay to just be there. You don't have to be the best. So and then that you tell them that's through primary school, you tell them that through secondary school, and then when they get to university, and then they're trying to be the best, or when they're at the job market, and then they are now just because they haven't built up that resilience, they've thought all their life, it doesn't really matter. But then you've now put them into a competitive world, then that stress would most likely have a huge impact on them, maybe more than someone who all their life they've told, you have to be first, so the person that came first don't have two words. So I think there's also a place for that. I may be wrong, but these are my own personal thoughts on the matter. So it worked for people, probably has worked for people, but my personal musings. So I'll just put that disclaimer. Those are my personal musings on the matter here. So I think resilience plays a huge factor in it.
Wow. And lastly, what is that thing that we should stop believing about mental health? One thing or two, you can decide to.
Well, the mental health. So this is, as an immigrant, I've met a lot of people that say that mental health is just for the Europeans. They are the ones that have mental health problems.
Really?
That is not true. There are people who have said that they don't chop belly food. Sorry, that is they have mental health problems. That is true. And mental. Anyone can have mental difficulties. And you see people, pregnant women, they've had babies, they have mental problems. So it's not to do with whether they've chopped belly food. So it's not. It's a European problem. It's a general problem. Anybody can have mental difficulties. I think that's one thing. Another thing is that it's not a spiritual problem. Mental problems are not spiritual problems. People genuinely have mental
David
problems.
several times had depression. He had to cry sometimes on his bed. That's why he wrote many songs. Solomon, the richest and the man with the biggest great wisdom. Job was depressed. So there are many biblical characters in the Bible that are depressed. So I think we should try to
take the stigma.
Exactly.
And having mental difficulties doesn't mean that they are weak.
Exactly. I think that is very important, because when you see some people that you are weak or you are depressed or you are anxious about something, they think it's abnormal, like maybe you don't have faith.
No. Having mental difficulties does not mean you don't have faith. Mental difficulties doesn't mean a person is weak. It doesn't make a person less of a Christian. It doesn't, for example, I was telling you about my church about being burnt out. I'm sure someone would have said, maybe she's just lazy. But I experienced it, and it had nothing to do with being lazy. And I felt at that point, I knew and I had to take a step at that point to help me in that. So there are a lot of myths about mental health that's wrong. It's not a sign of weakness. It doesn't mean a person doesn't have faith. It doesn't. We've never done that. It doesn't mean that person is less of a Christian. And seeking help doesn't mean you don't have faith. Seeking help doesn't mean you're less of a Christian. Seeking help doesn't mean you are weak. Actually, I think it's actually very brave to say that this is wrong and I need help for it. I think it's very, very brave. Trusting God that medication would even work, trusting God that therapy would even work, is even another level of faith in itself. And for it to even work is faith in itself. So there's help available if you're struggling with your mental health. It's as simple as going online and typing in depression, anxiety, and you'll find there's help available. 111 is there. Samaritans, there are different organizations and sectors that you can call to say, look. And some people you can pick up the phone and call us. You have someone listening. Some people they may be having a crisis and they just need someone that will just listen to them. And that's it.
And even in marriage in United Kingdom, when we don't have the community around us, what about our wife and husband? What about our children? Now, if we don't create this time in the family, where do we want to create time? Who do we want to talk to? I think it's very important that couples should create time for that. Like what you said, your husband has been a very great person helping out at home. I think because many people are facing a lot in diaspora and they really need that, and it's getting to their mental health.
I say something like, I know that sometimes when looking back home, people have like I can't remember what I was talking about, sometimes people have this Nigerian African marriage style and UK marriage. And sorry, in this country, that style, whatever it is, I don't know, wouldn't necessarily work. One person cannot shoulder everything one person cannot carry the whole burden. You have to work together as a team. You have to work together in unison. You have to be very mindful of the other person. You have to sit down and have conversations and talk. It's good. I when there are programs, people ask certain questions, and I'm like, God, you can't leave bills for. Okay, that's not what we're here for today. but you have to be mindful, especially in a country like this, because what you don't know is sometimes you put all of the burden on one person, whatever, even if it is all of the emotional or financial, when you put it on just one person, it can affect their mental health. And what people say is that, well, when we got to the UK, it changed, he didn't care about me again. And then what if that person is just depressed because they have so much on their mind, and then you're not really helping out, you're not really giving them time. So maybe they haven't changed. Maybe what is happening is that they are struggling with their mental health, and they don't know how to come out and say it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jose. You have been a really great blessing to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have been a blessing today to the viewers. I want to sincerely appreciate you.
So much
you have been a blessed sister to me. God bless you more in Jesus' name. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoy your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope when we call you, you will answer again.